All right. For those of you on the stream, we're about to, or on this channel, we're about to start streaming. Um, it may actually just start streaming now. Yep. Cool. Did it automatically. For those of you who are joining us on the Zoom meeting for the main track, we are getting started up. We will be actually going live in a time that is approximately a time, and it will be shown to you whenever I switch to the next slide. So we'll see you in a little bit, about 6 minutes or so. All right, folks. Hello, welcome. Heartifacts is go. Sarah, let's get this show on the road.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Heartifacts, our conference for intimate discussions about mental health, community building, and all other important things that software professionals need to talk about more. We're glad you're here, and again, that you could join us while we have all of these conversations. My name is Sarah Withy. I'm your MC for Heartifacts. We have 3 more great sessions for you tonight. We'll have more breakout sessions as well to talk about these thoughts, and then another fun activity. Don't forget the Code of Supply Conduct Policy still applies. You can review it on our website and at the bottom of every page. We'll be doing lightning talks for one of tomorrow's interactive sessions. Check Heartifacts Live on Slack for the sign up link. We'll notify you tonight or tomorrow morning if you've been selected. For our first speaker, Code and Supply's Managing Director and Executive Director of Heartifacts has some words to share. So I'll pass it over to Colin right now.
All right, humans of Heartifacts, hello. How are you? How are you doing tonight? I hope you're doing great. For the edification of those of us joining for the first time tonight, I want to give a short spiel about Code and Supply, the organization behind Heartifacts and its sibling conference Abstractions. Code and Supply is a 7-year-old small company that has built Pittsburgh's premier community for software professionals. We host meetups, conferences, online communities in Slack, Discord, and some other social media, and we run a co-working space here in Pittsburgh. Approximately 100 paid members support our day-to-day operations to provide these educational programs to more than 6,000 members of our community. If you like what we do, I encourage you to join as a paid member at codeandsupply.co/join, where you can see discounts and more. We also sell Heartifacts merch at codeandsupply.co/store, and we have a job board at codeandsupply.co/jobs. You'll hear more about all of these during the scheduled breaks this evening.
All right, thank you, Colin. Let's go ahead and dive into our first session for the evening. Tori Brenneison is a software developer and art historian whose purpose in life is to serve as a warning to others. When not writing integration code in a language that no one has ever heard of, speaking at conferences, or teaching programming to teenagers, she can usually be found hiking, petting dogs, or admiring her collection of mid-century glassware. Best to approach her in the wild with a sacrificial cup of coffee, and be forewarned, she's a hugger, although that's a little hard to do virtually. Tori's going to be sharing her story of being a recovering rock star. So go rock that talk, Tori.
All right, and can everyone see my screen? Yes, okay, cool. So hello everyone, my name is Tori Brenneison. This is the Recovering Rockstar. It is a talk about my journey through burnout and the burnout of my physical health, my mental health, and how I got myself back on track to be happy and healthy. Small content warning, we will talk a little bit, I will talk a little bit about potential addiction issues and some substance abuse. If that is something that you need to piece out of and turn me off, when we get there, you will definitely know it. You can hit the button and close me out. My earpiece work. Okay, cool. So a little bit about me. I'm a software developer from Cleveland, Ohio. I work at Harley-Davidson Dealer Systems. Everyone thinks that working for Harley-Davidson is super duper cool. It is, but it's also a normal software job, just with about 99% more motorcycles involved. This talk is about how burnout is bad. And you can all have about 29 minutes left in your life now, because this is the entire point of the talk. This is all you need to know. Write it down in your notebook, move on. I'm going to continue talking over 29 minutes because I signed a contract, and the Heartifacts organizers will yell at me if I don't continue talking. But in order to understand this talk, you need to understand a few things about me. Oh, and my computer has decided to freeze. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to understand a few things about me. This meme is me in fish form. I have a kind of aggressive, a little intimidating personality. I'm very type A. I'm very kind of high strung. What is this? Okay, I'm very kind of high strung, and that issue of my personality is kind of going to be brought to the forefront in this story. The other thing you need to realize about me, I am divorced. Don't be sorry for me. It was a good thing. And as a consequence of the divorce, I ended up moving back in with my parents. I was having a hard time finding employment. I was working at a minimum wage, part-time job, struggling to make ends meet, whole thing. And I had to switch careers and move into the tech sphere very, very quickly. In order to do that, I went to a programming boot camp, and I mean, the good news is that it came pretty naturally to me, but the bad news was I looked around and was like, well, I am competing with these 20 other people who are in this boot camp for jobs, and all of us, we're competing with people out there who have computer science degrees. We're competing with people who have experience. So I busted my butt to get through boot camp. I did extra work, I did side projects, I started networking, I started going to meetups. I had interviews lined up before the program ended. I mean, I worked. And as an end result of that work, I did almost immediately out of the boot camp land a job at Highland Software, which is one of Northeast Ohio's biggest and most well-known tech companies. So it worked out for me, but I'm about to share the cost involved in having that work out so well for me. I become kind of good friends with the woman who ran the boot camp. And as I was in, it was a brand new program. I was in kind of her first professional cohort. She called me up and she said, you know, I have the news here and they want to interview someone who went through the program. Would you come in and talk to them? So I said, yeah, sure, why not? And I ended up on the news. And I ended up on the news. So I was on the TV and I was kind of in this news article, and I had a really good response. I started going to some meetings with the boot camp. I was kind of their recruitment person. They had me, you know, trotted out as a success story a lot. And then they wanted to do a commercial. And when they got me to do the commercial, I mean, they came to me and said, Tori, you're a rock star. And I was like, no, I hate the word rock star. That is an omen. That is a bad omen. Like, no. And this commercial keeps me up at night. It haunts my dreams because I literally say the word rock star in the commercial. They asked me to, and I still think about it, and I don't like it. And you can find this on YouTube, but please don't, because it is tremendously embarrassing. But since I was getting involved in the tech community through the boot camp, and I was working at Highland. Highland is really into tech outreach and community outreach, and so they started asking me to do things. And this is the slide at which, I mean, I need to skip over this because I was losing so much time to paying attention to the slide and trying to tell you all how busy I was when I started my career. All you need to know really is that 2018 was a terrible year because I was overbooked. I was double booked for things. I could not say no to things. I would go to work and I would work and do things outside of work and stay at work and go back to work. And it was just so much work. And it wasn't even my day job. It was everything surrounding my day job. And I had to be, you know, I had a romantic partner, I had a kid, I had pets, like I'm doing all this on top of my life. And it was just, it was a lot. It was so much, but I didn't feel like it was burning me out because I was just stressed, right? Like just because I'm doing a whole lot of things, it doesn't mean that I'm suffering from burnout. I'm just really busy. We saw yesterday in the first talk that the World Health Organization says that burnout is workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. Well, I didn't have workplace stress. My day job was fine. I would go into the office, sit down, program the computer, and my day job was great. It was all the things I was doing in addition to my day job that was causing me so much stress and anxiety and causing me to feel bad. Which is why I really like this quote that I found from Elena Torini, who defined burnout as a combination of the nature of your work environment and what it demands of you, but also of your relationship to your work. And what had happened with me is that my relationship to my work was no longer healthy because I had made so much more work for myself. I had convinced myself that in order to be successful, I not only had to do my day job, but I had to do all these other things on top of it and keep putting myself out there and keep just going and going and going and always saying yes, because that was how I was going to be a success. And at that point, you begin to ask yourself, well, am I really just stressing because I have a lot going on, or am I burning out? And at that point, I kept telling myself that I was just a little stressed, but the truth was that I felt like absolute garbage all the time. Because being in this constant state of stress and anxiety and go, go, go makes us physically ill. I would wake up in the morning to go to work, and it was so hard to drag myself out of bed and to go to the office because I was so certain that it was going to be another bad day. When you're burnt out, it's every day is a bad day. You don't have the motivation to try and make it a good day anymore. You don't have the energy. You go to work and you procrastinate and you put things off because you don't want to do them, and then you have to do everything all at once because you left it until the very last minute. And then there's some small uptick and success in getting it done, but it's not done right and it's not done well because you don't care anymore. And after it keeps going on and going on and going on, you're so busy. I suffer from migraines, and my migraines went to chronic migraine. I always had some sort of event just threatening right around here to happen. I've worn a Fitbit since 2016, so I have the data on this. And my cardiovascular health tanked. I mean, we learned in yesterday's talk about its effects on your blood pressure and your heart rate. And by the time that I finally got help for all of this, my resting heart rate averaged at 90, which for my size and my age is extremely high. Any sort of physical activity I did would just send my pulse skyrocketing until I felt like I was going to pass out. And, I'm thinking about this and I'm wondering, why was I doing this to myself? Like, what was the pursuit of work and more work? What I kept saying yes, even though I knew that it wasn't good for me anymore. These are some photos I want to share with you guys. It's a fun little game called the selfie that I send to my girlfriends in the group chat when I'm feeling like trash, and the photo that I post on social media. So this one is from 2018. It's from one of the Highland Women in Tech conferences that I was organizing. The bathroom selfie is obviously right before I went out and started the conference. And you could be forgiven for thinking that the other selfie with the tremendous bags under my eyes is after I got home and I was tired from running a conference. And instead, it's the other way around. That selfie is me being like, I'm going to run late because I need to put on 20 pounds of makeup in order to hide what's going on right here. Here's another one. The caption on this one was, I haven't slept for 2 days, LOL. Meanwhile, compare contrast with the president of my high school giving me a Young Alumni Award for, all the things I do to promote women in tech because I'm so busy that I'm dying on the inside, which I feel like comes across a little in my face there, but hopefully no one else could tell. The most telling one, though, this is me on my way home from a speaking engagement versus the selfie I sent to my friend asking her to bring the box of Kleenex from her desk to the Highland ladies' room because I had to stress cry in the bathroom and I'd run out of toilet paper, but someone else was in there, so I didn't want to leave the stall. Like, if you are stress crying at work, you probably have a problem. Like, you shouldn't be stress crying at work. I mean, I think we've all cried at work at least once, but it shouldn't be an ongoing occurrence. And this kept going, and I kept putting work onto myself. This is from CodeMash in 2019. So this is January of 2019. And so at this point, I've been running myself ragged for over a year. And you can tell if you look at the bathroom hotel selfie, the end of my ponytail looks kind of gross. My hair is a little scraggly. If you look up where my part is, it's a little thin. And that's because the fatigue and the health effects of the burnout and everything were getting to the point where my hair was falling out. If you look at my social media selfie, I have a lot of product in my hair. I'm making a weird face so you can't tell how tired I am. And my hair is very carefully parted in a way that hides where my actual like natural part is, because my hair situation was getting kind of iffy. Finally, in April, I ended up at the doctor. This is actually for my birthday. My 33rd birthday present to myself was a trip to the doctor to explain that I couldn't keep doing what I was doing and I needed to know if there was something actually physically wrong with me. And I was expecting just, a brief examination and for her to tell me that I needed to maybe cut some things out of my schedule and meditate a little and drink water and I would be fine. And instead, she ordered 7 different blood tests, did a physical, and told me that we needed to find what was causing my health issues because it couldn't keep going this way, which was a wake-up call. I mean, we did find out that I had a low-grade, non-anemic iron deficiency that would help explain some of the symptoms. It was probably why I was so tired and why I looked so tired, and it probably had a lot to do with my hair. But aside from those health effects, it wouldn't explain the total package, and I definitely did need to stop running myself ragged all the time. So I had to ask myself, why am I doing this? Because it's not just about money anymore. It's not about furthering my career at this point. It may have started that way, but that's not what it was at all, because as soon as I stopped moving, as soon as I tried to relax, I would become so keyed up. I'd get so much anxiety and feel like I wasn't being productive and I wasn't working and I needed to be doing more and I needed to be starting things, and people would miss me if I disappeared, and what if I don't get enough likes on Twitter? And I learned that your brain actually can become addicted to productivity in the same way that it can be addicted to alcohol, it can be addicted to substances, it can be addicted to other kind of destructive behaviors. The front part of our brain changes physically. We rewire ourselves to be in pursuit of the high, of this feeling that we get. And that's that front part of our brain, right up here, that's where our executive functioning lives. So in the same way that someone with ADHD, for example, their executive function is influenced in a way that it causes problems with attention and focus and impulsive behavior. When you have a problem with addiction, your executive function is so tuned in to pursuing that reward that you let the rest of your life just fall apart. The only thing that matters is satisfying the reward system in your brain, which is so fine-tuned to this one thing. So this is your content warning part. Like, if you need to drop off, I understand. So for me, that feeling of anxiety that I would get when I felt like I would try to relax, but it would feel bad and I would get so nervous and I didn't know what to do with myself, was very reminiscent of the feeling that I would get about 10 years ago when my pill bottle was empty. So I have not touched a benzodiazepine in over 10 years. Like, I'm good with that. I am what the cool kids now call in remission, which is when you have been in active recovery from your addiction for over 5 years. But for me, the word recovery is an ongoing process. It's something that promises us that we're going to get better. It's something that I think about often, maybe not every day anymore, but I consider it to be something that I'm always putting into practice. And so if we can recover from other forms of addiction, and if we can recover from mental health issues, at least to a certain extent, we can recover from burning ourselves out and becoming addicted to work and this idea that we need to be productive and we need to be successful. The question is, how do we do that? Or at least, how did I do that? And if you're suffering from kind of the same kind of things, maybe some of these can help you. It's a pop culture reference by now that step one is admitting you have a problem, which obviously with my trip to the doctor, I realized that something had to change. Even if you've never been in a 12-step program, you've never read a big book in your life, you're probably familiar with that saying. And now that I'd identified the root cause of my problem, that I had to keep working because I'd rewired my brain that way, it was time to take some steps to undo the damage. the first thing was I had to tackle all the things I had let go in my lifestyle that enabled me to just keep saying yes to things and overbooking my calendar. I mean, after all, it's, in order to recover from my benzo addiction, I had to stop taking benzos. It's like, you can't keep doing the same lifestyle things. You could follow all the slides that would come after this, but if you don't change your lifestyle, nothing else changes. What I had to learn is how to manage expectations around my time, both my expectations and other people's expectations. And I learned 5 magic words to doing that, and they are: let me check my schedule. It's not a yes, it's not a no. It's when someone asks you to do something, let me check my schedule. And it gives you that little break to be like, do I really want to do this? Can I book this? I can look this up and actually see if I'm overbooked, and then I can make a decision. And I found that people don't really push back once you say no. If you say, oh no, I'm sorry, I'm so busy, I'd love to help you, but I can't. I haven't had someone push back on that. So it's a good way to say no without being like hard no. And along with that, it's let me cut down my schedule to things that I actually really want to do and things that I'm actually really passionate about. The other thing that I learned is that I need to delegate my responsibilities better. If I'm in an event, like I'll fill a leadership vacuum all day long, but I can't micromanage. I can't be responsible for everything. I need to trust other people to do things for me. Even if it was like writing this talk, I sent my partner out to get dinner because I can't sit down, write a talk, and cook dinner. And it's just those small steps, small things that you can do to just free up your schedule and learn to let go a little bit. The other thing that I had to take care of was my physical health, which, as evidenced by my trip to the doctor, suffered a lot. The first thing was I bought this water bottle. I was drinking literally pots of coffee a day in an effort to both stay awake and be interesting, and because I just really like coffee and I let it get totally out of hand. I hate drinking water, but I make sure that I fill this up at least once a day and drink the entire thing. I realize that you're supposed to drink like 2 of these, but I really, really hate water. And honestly, even the half amount of water, big difference in health. The other thing for me was my sleep hygiene. Again, with the Fitbit, if you have a Fitbit with a heart rate monitor in it, it will actually track how you sleep and give you a sleep score. My sleep score was abysmal. I've raised it about 30 points since beginning my whole wellness makeover. And even just taking my electronics and taking my work things out of the bedroom, not working until I absolutely had to fall asleep, not just pushing myself and then expecting myself to fall asleep immediately. Getting some nice pajamas, getting some nice pillows, taking a little work break before I try going to bed. These are tiny things that make a really big difference, because giving your body that chance to rest and reset is so vitally important. And this is from someone who, years and years ago also had insomnia problems. Like, I love sleep. I don't know what I'm gonna do if I have insomnia again, because I love sleep. Sleep is my new favorite thing. It's like I've just discovered it. I'm completely in love. I have the obligatory endorphins make you happy on here. Getting a workout is always good for you, getting your heart rate up a little, even if you're just taking a short walk. But I'm trying to stay away from things that like you can Google and Google can tell them to do better than I can. I do want to talk about releasing pressure and releasing anxiety and dealing with it in a healthy way. That frustration and that feeling that I had when I was so keyed up and I didn't feel like I was being productive and I needed to do something. Those feelings when we're trying to change our lives and when we're trying to come back from something that's very negatively affected our health, we can have a lot of anger, we can have a lot of frustration in dealing with that. We need to release those feelings in ways that are not harmful to others and are not harmful to ourselves. When you're suffering from something like burnout, it's really easy to start self-medicating. It's really easy to go and start, having a glass of wine every night that turns into 2, that turns into 3, that turns into a bottle. It's really easy to have, it's easy to have another problem in addition to your burnout. So it's really important to find a way to release those feelings in ways that aren't harmful, especially things like anger, because I know I had a lot of anger towards myself. And it's this feeling of, I mean, almost shame that you let things get so bad and you should have known better and you kind of turn that inward. The best advice, and this is going to sound so stupid, but I love sharing it with people. I once had a therapist tell me go out and buy a newspaper. And the whole point of the newspaper was that next time I was just absolutely furious at myself and I just wanted to punch something or just, you know, to take it out somehow, I would get the newspaper and just rip it to shreds. And let me tell you, when you are absolutely just so angry at the world, taking it out on just this shreddable paper is really satisfying. It sounds silly, but it's absolutely true. The other things I wanted to talk about journaling, as everyone tells you to hit the gym. I'm bad at journaling. I know that it's good for me and it's a mindfulness practice, but I am so bad at keeping up a journal. I will write about my feelings for like 3 days max and then forget the thing exists. I tricked myself into journaling by writing down what I had for dinner every night because I am very highly food motivated. I love food. So if I write down what I have for dinner every night, because I won't skip dinner, so I won't skip writing down what I had for dinner, I find that I'm already journaling, I'm already writing down my dinner. So I might as well write down how I'm feeling, and then I start thinking about it, and then congratulations, now I'm journaling for real instead of just writing menu plans. 2 more slides. This was also one of my big ones, and it was doing things that are the opposite of work. Dedicated time in my schedule, scheduling blocks of non-productive activity. And I have to define non-productive activity. These are things that do not produce a product, like there's no end thing that you end up with, and they do not help you accomplish any sort of goal. This is just mindless, this is sitting on the couch binging Netflix. And not binging a documentary or not learning. This is brain candy time. This is on your phone playing Candy Crush until your phone just dies because you've lost track of time. Things like going and taking a walk, but a slow, aimless walk. I define this as the difference between me, I'm a hiker, so walking is my hobby. It's the difference between me taking an ambling walk through my neighborhood and me strapping on a pack, driving to the park, and hiking for 10 miles. One of those has a goal. The other one is non-productive time. And at first, this was tremendously hard. I had to force myself to turn off and do something that didn't matter, but it gets easier the more you do it. Last slide. Well, there's 3 more slides, but this is really the last important slide. I want to talk about social support. Again, these are things that you can Google, and Google can tell you them better than I can. But I do want to talk about employee assistance programs. They are usually offered by a lot of employers, and they can not only provide mental health and counseling services, often for free. A lot of them I've seen employees get, X number of therapy visits on the employee assistance programs that they don't have to pay for. But if you're having any sort of other struggle in your life, they can provide often legal assistance, financial advice, things like that. So your employer is already paying for it. If it's an offering to you, please take advantage of it in general. Also, therapy. I love therapy. I am currently a therapy graduate, but would go back in a heartbeat. I think everyone should have a therapist before they need one, just in case. Having a professional to talk things out with and kind of process your feelings with and kind of check in with, I think, is vitally important in any sort of recovery process. And then just getting out of the office. One of my problems working at Highland was that, I'd come fresh out of the divorce. All my friends are my ex's friends. So I made new friends and I made them at work. And these people are still my friends, even though I don't work at Highland. They're amazing. But we'd be like, oh yeah, we should hang out after work. And hanging out after work was booking a conference room at work after work, which didn't help with my work-life balance that didn't exist because also all of my friends were work. So even if you can get out on your lunch break, take a walk, you can just go out to the parking lot of your job. And if you work from home, leave your house, go out in your driveway, go in your backyard, do something that gets you away from your work environment for at least a little bit every single day. So helpful. But I am out of time. And because I'm out of time, I want to leave you with two things. I want to leave you with, I am doing much better. I am feeling better. I'm very intentional about the projects that I take on. I'm very happy that I got to share this with you today. I would like you to know that now these selfies I send to my girlfriends are just outtakes of my photo shoots of my dogs where the lighting isn't so good and my dog looks derpier than usual. And finally, that if you or one of your loved ones is experiencing a mental health or substance abuse problem, please call the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration's free helpline. The number is 1-800-662-HELP. This is available in the United States. Other countries may have a similar resource. They will be there for you in English and Spanish, 24/7, 365, with information, support, and they can refer you to any sort of treatment that you may need. So my name is Tori Brenneison. This has been the Recovering Rockstar. Thank you, Heartifacts, very much. I'll give you back to Sarah.
Thank you, Tori. I always appreciate conference talk sessions with stories in them, but even more especially with vulnerable stories. So I appreciate you speaking both a deep story at this Heartifacts as well as you spoke at our last one too. So thank you for both of those. Somebody had asked us in our Heartifacts live channel, do you have any advice for figuring out which responsibilities can or should be delegated when you're a team of one?
Oh, when you're a team of one, that's hard when you have a team of one. If there's any hope of becoming a team of two, I would do that, but I understand that's not always possible. For me, I've been lucky to have other support. I don't know, for a team of one, I would just say, is there something in your personal life that you can delegate out? Even, I had the ability to send my partner out for meals. Can you do something like a meal planning service or a subscription service or something that will deliver that to your door instead of having to go grocery shopping? Can you find any way to kind of automate and make your life easier with really anything and delegate that out to a service? Dry cleaning pickup?
Yeah, those are some good thoughts. I was also thinking about how with a lot of remote jobs, people, especially if they've been working in person for their job, there's probably this higher stress level that people have this need to feel productive or work a lot or at odder hours. Do you have suggestions on how they could try and reduce their stress when maybe the team or management kind of expects them to be this rock star at home?
So, fun story with Harley-Davidson dealer systems right now. We are all working overtime because we are beholden to the motor company, and the motor company's deadlines did not get moved when we lost some staff. And long story short, everyone is working a lot from home because we don't have an office anymore and ever again. So everyone at my job has been adjusting to that exact situation. For me, my work-life balance is obviously, it's really important to me now. I've changed jobs twice in pursuit of a better balance, and I'm really protective of my time at home. So this entire area that you have seen around me is brand new. It's been built once I found out that I wouldn't have an office ever again at Harley-Davidson. At lunchtime, I may not get to take my full lunchtime, but there's going to be at least 20 minutes where I am off. Do not send me Teams messages because I will not get them. I am not in this room. I am elsewhere in my house. I am taking a walk outside. I am gone. If it is really important, I have Teams on my phone and you can tag me. But if you tag me and it's not important, I'll be mad. It's okay to be mad at your teammates. Other than that, scheduling is a big one, making sure that we have enough devs on at one time to pair and do work and knock things out. And then if all else fails, push back to your management. Your manager probably cares about you more than you think. The dev team at Harley-Davidson has been really, really fortunate to have a manager that will push back to the product team when they enact a kind of unreasonable deadline on us. And if all it says, call me because I'll yell for you. Like, my team has learned that I don't have a filter on this. And so some of the product team have gotten like full Tori, why is this our problem? Because we didn't set these deadlines. it's about boundaries, and sometimes you have to enforce them using your voice very loudly and forcefully over Teams.
Yeah. You'd also mentioned taking your vacation days, which I guess hypocritically agree with you, because I know right now I've started a new job and I'm probably could use a little vacation, but feeling guilty about trying to take it. Any ideas on how to ensure people do things like this, or cutting your clutter, or some of the other things you suggested?
So I'm also a vacation day hypocrite. I will hoard my vacation days. I have to force myself to actually use them. Part of my problem is that I always want to take off like the end of the year, like that weird Christmas, New Year's time. Like I always want to take that off, and then I'm like, well, I can't use them anywhere else because I want that. I'm like, I get 3 weeks, and that's like a week max. So Tori, what are you doing? You need to like go somewhere. And at the height of my burnout, I actually had a friend who was like, you need a vacation. And I was like, Patrick, I don't take vacations. I don't. Like, I gave him this whole, I don't take vacations because I can't, because everyone needs me. And he told me that wasn't good for me, and I told him to F off. But it's find something that you want to do. So when you think about what kind of downtime is important to you, like for me, it's getting outside. And I know that I can get outside in the winter. I don't mind winter camping, but other people do. And so if I want to go out with my friends and we want to go camping, I need to take a vacation during the summer. And I will contact people. We will schedule that in advance, and it will get on the schedule as soon as possible. And I will tell my manager, and then I can't change it. So it's getting it on the schedule. It's kind of identifying what is important to you to do outside of work and scheduling that. It's not, don't take a vacation and just like stay at home and watch TV. I know I talked about non-productive activity, but use a vacation to motivate you to do something else that you care about, to get away, to travel, to just do something fun, and don't think about work for a while.
Yeah. You had also suggested hobbies or non-productive time as important things to make sure you schedule for. Do you have suggestions on one, either how to pick up a hobby, or more reliably pick one up if you maybe already have it and you're just not doing it lately, or other suggestions on like if you cleared space out of your calendar, not filling it back up again with things that don't matter so much?
So when I say like a non-productive hobby, I have a whole lot of hobbies that result in an end product, and I enjoy doing them. And at first, when I first started, I didn't allow myself to do any of them because I was like, this is sit on the couch and watch Netflix time. This is not Tori goes and bakes a really elaborate cake time. This is not doing things time. And I've since been able to work elaborate cakes and hiking and reading books and things back into my schedule because those are things that I care about. I mean, those are hobbies. Those are things that give me fulfillment. But at first, I focused on doing nothing because I had to relearn how to do nothing. And then as far as picking up a hobby is finding something that's important to you to fill your non-work time. I mean, go back to maybe what you wanted to do as a kid. Like when you were little, what were you interested in? It was probably, I don't know, space or dinosaurs would seem really universal. A kid could tell you about space and dinosaurs all day long. I got over my space phase, but I'll still go outside and look at stars. That's fine. I got back into baking after years. Actually, I had picked up baking as a way to deal with anxiety years ago and picked it back up and moved into cakes, although I'm really more into the decorating than the making now. But really just, and if you can't pick anything, if you're paralyzed for choice, there are dozens of, if you can force yourself to go out and interact with people, if you're not like me, I'm a massive introvert, there are tons of meetup groups that you can go and like, you only need to meet those people once. And if you're not into them, like if you're not into whatever they're doing, you never have to see those people again. You can try it out once and move on with your life. It's okay to quit something if you don't like it. You don't have to choose a hobby and be stuck with it forever.
Yeah. All right. Q&A time is up. So thank you again. That was Tori Brenneison. If you weren't here yesterday, we're about to head out into our breakout rooms. So here in a moment, registered Heartifacts Interactive participants are welcome to switch over for breakout room A. And that's on the attendee portal link you've received. We'll then split you apart into separate rooms, or maybe we'll just stay in the same room. I think we did that a couple times yesterday. You can chat with each other for a bit. You can also reflect on Tori's talk you just heard. You're welcome to share stories, experiences, or other things, but also don't feel any pressure to share anything you're not comfortable with. We're about to send you off. We'll meet back here in about 10 minutes. So at 8:50 Eastern, 5:50 Pacific. See you then.
Hey folks, we're back from our break. I want to tell you a little bit about the Code and Supply merch that we've got up for Heartifacts. You go to codeandsupply.co/x/HF merch. You'll be directly taken to our Heartifacts marketplace on our store. Please do check it out. Codeandsupply.co/store if you want to see everything. We have a variety of merchandise available for abstractions and for uptime and for Heartifacts and just general geekery things. One of my favorite new additions is our binary 412 pattern, as well as our Ethernet wiring diagram pattern. Something else that I'm wanting to show off, we're going to auction off this really cool fresh organic Pennsylvania backyard slate slab with an amazing Heartifacts Heart Rivers logo painted on it in acrylic. It's a great memento to remember Heartifacts 2020, and it's certainly one of a kind. We'll drop the bid form into the Heartifacts live channel sometime tonight and announce the winner before the last presentation on Saturday. Proceeds will be split with the artist, our very own Brigitte Lefevre, who did all of the logos and artwork for Heartifacts and was the mind behind much of the graphic design and installation artwork that we had at Abstractions last year. So please do give that a shot. Heartifacts live, and you'll see the link pretty much as soon as I stop talking. Sarah, are we ready for our next talk?
I think we are. Welcome back to Heartifacts 2, Returning to Follow Your Heart. Never mind, that's a bad sequel name. Anyway, our next speaker is a non-binary adventurer from Buffalo, New York, who wishes they were immortals so they could have time to visit every coffee shop in the world. That's a lot of coffee. They're a Rails engineer with TrueLink Financial and a panelist on the podcast Greater Than Code. In their free time, they do advocacy in the transgender community, write comics, and spend as much time as they can in the forest. Let's bring Jamie Hampton in so we can learn how to achieve inclusivity through remote work. Jamie?
Hello, I got to share my screen so you can see my presentation. So I got the thumbs up. Cool. Well, I'm going to get started. I want to thank Heartifacts and the organizers for putting on such a great event. I want to thank everyone for taking the time and for inviting me directly into your own living room. It's very cozy. Thank you. My talk is called Achieving Inclusivity Through Remote Work. I have an intro slide that pretty much covers what Sarah just said about me. Thank you for the nice intro. My name is Jameson Hampton, but my friends call me Jamie. I'm coming at you live from Buffalo, New York, the home of bad sports. I'm an engineer at TrueLink Financial. I've actually been there for 5 whole days, so that's really exciting for me. And I'm on Greater Than Code, which is a tech podcast about kind of the human side of tech, which you could check out if you haven't. I think it's pretty good. And you can find me online pretty much anywhere, but specifically Twitter at JamieBash. Please add me, be my friend, tweet at me, send me pictures of your pets. You can tweet about my talk. Just please remember, if you're going to post about me publicly, that I use they, them pronouns. Thanks. But obviously what I really want to talk about is remote work. So I have a couple of stats for the beginning. This is from the Stack Overflow Developer Survey in 2019. So you can see that even in the before times of 2019, there were about 12% of people who were full-time remote, but more people who worked remote at least sometimes. So it is a thing. I think it'll be really interesting to see the 2020 stats, but I'm going to talk more about that later. Also in the Stack Overflow survey in 2017, they asked a question about like what kind of priorities people have when they're looking for a new job, what's important to them. And 53% of people said that remote options were a top priority for them. So this is obviously something that's important to people and that we're all thinking about. Personally, I've been in tech for about 7 years, and I've been working remote the whole time, like 80 to 100% remote. And when I tell people that, it usually we usually have a conversation that goes a little bit like this. And I know that from working with other remote people, these kind of responses are annoying to people. And I understand why overall. People who have never worked remote sometimes act like it's a walk in the park, and like it's not. It's a real job. You have to get just as much work done as an office job. In fact, I feel more guilty about taking breaks or whatever when I'm working from home, because in an office, water cooler chat is kind of a thing that happens naturally. But at home it doesn't, and it can be isolating not having that kind of chat. This is an excerpt from a comic in the oatmeal, but I can relate. Overall, though, my response is more like this. Because I really love working remote. It works for me, it helps me do my best work, and it's awesome. So I want to talk about why that is. And I think I'll start by talking about some of just the general benefits of remote work, because anybody might have benefits. It gives you more flexibility. Maybe you want to start your day a little earlier, a little later. That's usually fine. Maybe you have things to do at specific times during the day, like you have to pick up your kid from daycare. You can work around those kind of things normally more easily than in an office. Not having to commute gives you a lot more flexibility too. This is a big one for me living in Buffalo. A, because we don't have good public transportation here, and B, because we have bad weather and I don't want to dig out my car in the winter. So this is great for me. It gives you the freedom to work from anywhere. Obviously, we're not traveling right now, but normally I would be traveling a lot, and it's nice to be able to work from wherever I go. Like if I go to Texas to visit my family, I don't have to take a week off. I can work during the day and spend time with them in the evenings, and it gives me more time with my family. Your mileage may vary with this one. Some people find it difficult to work from home and not get distracted by home stuff. It's really not for everyone. It's a personal preference. Obviously, this one's out the window right now because we have lots of distractions. Again, I'm going to talk more about that later. But personally, I find that my productivity is a lot better when I'm working from home. I don't have people walking around me in an office. I don't have them coming up and talking to me about things. I can really go heads down and like get work done. And I love that. Plus, just like being comfortable in your space is like huge. It's not to be understated. It's a big factor for people. So again, that list was kind of in general. And I think the word benefits is kind of interesting because it can kind of mean two different things. I read a lot of definitions of the word benefits when I was working on this talk. I like this one. A lot of them also use the word advantageous, which I thought was interesting. And it kind of gets at that first definition of benefits. It's something that's nice to have. It makes your life a little better, a little more convenient. But there's another way that we use the term benefits, like our benefits package. And there are people for whom remote work is more than just a little bit of extra convenience. Some benefits make it possible to do something that you wouldn't have been able to otherwise do. And remote work is one of those things for me. So while it's cool to think about what benefits you want to give people, I think it can be more helpful to think about like what problem or barrier you want to help them solve. Normally here in this talk, I would do a couple of slides next about why it's important to strive for a diverse team. I had to trim for time, and that's what I decided to trim because I figure that anyone who's coming to a conference like Heartifacts probably already knows that diversity is important. So I'm going to go straight into examples of kind of different demographics of people who might benefit and what barriers and problems remote work might be solving. First, I'm going to talk about chronic illness and disability. This has to be kind of general because there's lots of different kind of illness and disability, and they have different challenges and needs. That said, I will disclose that I have pretty severe anxiety disorder, and it's a big part of the reason that working from home feels very critical for me. So I'm going to talk to my experience about that specifically also. Lots of different disabilities have different accessibility concerns and need different accommodations. It's likely that the best ones are going to be at someone's own house where they can control all of the variables and feel very comfortable in the space. Accessibility concerns can also kind of flow into difficulties getting to work. But I've experienced that too. Before I was fully remote, I used to miss a ton of work because sometimes I just felt too bad to get out of bed in the morning, but like I could still work if I could work from my bed. In fact, working helps me as a distraction when I'm having bad anxiety. So it's wonderful to be able to work from my bed when I'm having a bad day. Flexible working hours are great for everybody, but some people need them for more tangible reasons than other people. If I have like a panic attack early in the morning, I pretty much need to go back to sleep for a couple of hours or I'm going to be totally useless. So if I can start a little bit late and work a little bit late, now there's a whole day that I'm working that I would have otherwise had to like call in sick and miss the whole day. But I don't need the whole day. Also, if you have chronic illness and you have frequent doctor's appointments related to it, that requires a lot of flexibility too. Energy conservation. I do another talk about spoon theory specifically, which is kind of a metaphor that describes how we ration our energy in a day. The spoons are the unit of energy that we spend. And people with chronic illness have to ration their energy in a more real way than other people. And if you don't have to like get dressed, you don't have to commute to work, those are things that might be taking up a lot of energy, especially if you have like chronic pain. Now you can spend that energy like going straight into your day, and that's great. Also, lots of people who struggle with illness just have good days and bad days, and you might not want people to see your bad days. For me, that kind of means that if I have a panic attack at home, you know, it sucks. I'm not having a great day. But if I have a panic attack at work, it feels really awful and it's really embarrassing. So just being able to turn my video off if I'm having a bad day, like preserves a lot of privacy. Again, this has to be really general because I'm kind of like sweeping in a lot of different underrepresented groups of people in tech. But I think energy conservation is a big thing again. Spoon theory was really invented specifically to talk about chronic illness, but I do think underrepresented folks have to use more energy at work for a few different reasons. Code switching is one of them. We often talk about bringing your whole self to work. It's really nice in theory. I try to do it, but realistically, nobody really does it because, of course, the way you talk to your coworkers is different than the way you talk to your friends and family. And that's much more true if you're not part of like the majority in-group. This might mean that like the slang you'd use around your friends that are from your same ethnic group is different. For me, it means that the way I talk around a group where everyone is queer is very different. And there's an energy cost associated with making those kind of decisions about how you communicate. Microaggressions I could do a whole talk on, but basically what I'm talking about here is like small, indirect, often unintentional discriminations against minority groups. And these things happen in the office. This might be things like off-color jokes, you know, making assumptions about people. For me, getting misgendered is a big example. They're small, they might not be malicious, but they still add up and take energy. I think this is related actually, this idea of like fitting in. Someone once told me a story of working at a series of jobs where they were the only Latino in the office and they always felt like none of their coworkers really fully understood them. And then they worked at a place for the first time that was 100% remote and there were people from all over the world on that team. And they felt for the first time like, oh, everyone here is different from everyone else. So I don't stick out in any way. We're all just coming together. I thought that story was really cool. And they expressed to me that like it was a really good feeling. It can also be really expensive to work. Like think about someone who's coming from an underprivileged background who just did a boot camp and they're like out looking for their first tech job. Maybe they can't afford a nice wardrobe to wear to the office yet. Maybe everyone wants to go out to lunch and they can't afford that and it makes them feel left out. Even transportation to and from work might be a problem, and you're cutting all of those concerns right out. I think location-based diversity is actually really interesting because people who come from different places and live in different places and have different backgrounds have different perspectives, and having a lot of different perspectives on your team makes it better and more thoughtful. But there's lots of reasons why people might not be able to live in major urban areas where a lot of tech jobs are. First of all, it's extremely expensive to live in like New York or San Francisco. People might have family obligations that they don't want to move away to the big city and like leave their family behind. That might be more common in other cultures other than like American culture, because people think about their family in a different way, which is super valid. It's great to have people from other countries on your team too, but they might not be able to easily like physically come to the States and work at your office. These are all things that might affect anybody, but I think they disproportionately affect people from underrepresented backgrounds because they come from different cultures, different places. A lot of us come from underprivileged backgrounds. So this is kind of hitting hard on that group again. I do want to talk specifically about the trans community for a few reasons. I'm trans, talk about what you know. There's a lot of trans people working in tech though, and it's growing, which means the likelihood that you already have a trans person on your team, or you will, or more than one, is like growing. And understanding this perspective will help you be a better coworker. I also think the reason that is because not all industries you can work remote, but you can in tech. And I think remote jobs can be really uniquely attractive to trans people. So I'll talk about the reasons why. Transitioning at work is really hard. Actually, transitioning in general is really hard. It's just a huge change in one's life, for the better, but like any period of intense change is really hard. Plus, you also have to worry about if people are going to be respectful of you, which is frustrating. But even if you're in a good situation where everyone at your job wants to be respectful of you, which unfortunately isn't always the case, but even if so, there are still unique challenges. A lot of trans people have a lot of baggage about like clothes and their wardrobe. That can make it really hard to navigate like business casual. Also, a lot of people have to essentially replace their entire wardrobe when they come out, and that's really tough to do all at once, and it happens over time. So newly out trans people often don't have a lot of clothes. It's hard to explain how stressful it is to use the bathroom in public when you're trans. You might have some of an idea from seeing like bathroom laws on the news, but trust me, it's just better for me to use the gender neutral bathroom in my own house. I feel super self-conscious about my appearance a lot of times, but if that's not bad enough, transitioning often comes with like awkward teenage phases, especially if you're on hormones. It can be very uncomfortable to be seen every day. So it can be a relief to just be able to turn off the camera again. Also, some people really want to keep their transition private, which is super valid. This idea of just like emerging out of a cocoon, I get it. Even well-meaning coworkers are sometimes going to mess up on name and pronouns. It's easier to practice and get it right over text-based communication because you can be more thoughtful and catch yourself. At my old company, everyone was really respectful. On Slack, they always got it right, but in person, people slipped up and it made it like really tough for me. Also, it's anxiety-inducing to correct people, and it's easier over text. Plus, like not all trans people have surgeries, but a lot of us do. I did 2 years ago, and I was worried about taking off time from work, but I ended up being able to take off less time than I thought because I couldn't really get up and move around, but again, I could work. And people weren't perceiving my physical form while I was recovering, which was nice. So we've talked about the benefits of remote work, but there's also cons. There's already a lot of articles that go into the challenges of remote work and give tips. Now that we're in the situation we're in, we're seeing a lot more of that, which is nice because it's nice that people who are already good at remote work want to support people who are new to it. But actually the phrase already good at remote work is kind of what I'm getting at, this remote mindset. Remote work isn't easy. It takes work. It doesn't come naturally to everyone, but it's a skill that you can practice and get better at. A healthy remote environment doesn't just happen. You have to be intentional about what you want it to look like and how you're going to get there. So I'm going to talk about some tips, some specific ones. First, I want to talk about text-based communication. Not all communication for remote people is via text, but like a ton of it is. I think these tips will help anybody, but I do think that they'll particularly help people like me who struggle with mental illness. So this is kind of like personal stuff. There's reasons why text-based communication works for me. One of my anxiety symptoms is memory lapse. So it's really helpful to be able to go back and review exactly what people said later to remember the context of it. Being put on the spot with questions is also anxiety inducing for me. So async culture helps a lot with that. But even if someone needs an answer right away, I still get to think a little bit more about how I'm going to word it when I'm typing. But it can be tough too. My anxiety makes me worry a lot about tone, and I read into people's words a lot. So I think it's important to err on the side of over communicating. Tell me explicitly if your inquiry is urgent or non-urgent. Don't be afraid to just clarify your tone, even if it feels a little awkward. It sounds silly, but I think emojis can really convey some nuance sometimes. My old company had a Slack emoji, WYC, which stood for when you can. It's actually an acronym that my dad and I made up when I was growing up, because he would text me and be like, call me. And then I would freak out why, what's going on? And I would call him in a panic, and he wanted to tell me a funny story. So we invented when you can to kind of denote it's not important in that way. And that's about context too. The worst possible thing for my anxiety is can you hop on a call right now? Because then I'm like, what? Is it urgent? Am I in trouble? What's it about? Did something bad happen? Is someone getting fired? Am I getting fired? I'm reading into it 1,000 ways. If you just said, hey, can you hop on a call right now? It's time sensitive, but not an emergency, and it relates to this project. It's a few more seconds to type out, but it cuts out a lot of anxiety on my end. You're already kind of doing the first step to becoming a good advocate by listening to me talk right now. Getting a sense of some of these perspectives is a really good first step. But I also have some actionable tips. I love this idea of remote first culture. Even if not everybody is remote first. When some people are remote and others aren't, the remote people tend to miss out on conversations that are happening in person. That might mean socially, just not getting to know people as well, but that could mean you're passed up for opportunities. Sometimes people even get left out of conversations that are relevant to projects that they work on. Not maliciously, two people just meet in the hall, hey, let's talk about that project. But it makes it really hard to work effectively when you're not included. These are all things that underrepresented folks already struggle more with than other people. So remote work, if done wrong, can make that worse. If you notice someone being left out, just say something. Hey, we should talk about that project, but we should include Jamie. Let's wait until we can get them on a call with us. This one's kind of a personal pet peeve, but I hate being on a call where there's a bunch of people in a room together and then a few people have called in. I cannot keep up with the conversation that's happening in that room. There's lag, there's noise, I can't speak up fast enough. It literally makes me feel more left out than just not inviting me to a meeting. At my old company, I complained a lot about this, and then we started making everyone phone in individually, all the people at the office had their own laptop and headphones, and it was way better. Even though they were together, I felt like I was on the same playing field as them. I could not possibly cover all microaggressions, as I said, but in general, a good way to support underrepresented folks in the workplace is to get better at identifying microaggressions so that you cannot do them, and B, you can stop other people when they do them. I'm going to talk about a couple that are super relevant to some of the specific things I've already brought up. Don't comment on people's appearance. There's no reason. It only makes people feel uncomfortable. I don't mean I like your new haircut, but maybe someone's looking under the weather. Maybe they have some awkward acne that they're going through. Maybe they're wearing their pajamas. It's just easy and costs $0 not to say anything about it and make them feel weird about it. A lot of places push for video on all the time during calls. I actually really get that. I do think there's value in that. It's fostering more of a relationship between coworkers. But if there's someone who has to keep their video off sometimes, there's probably a reason that they feel more comfortable with that. So again, just don't make them feel weird about it. Correct pronouns are not just for when you're with somebody. This is something I get a lot of stress about. If there are people in person together in an office and I'm remote, I worry a lot, am I getting misgendered in the office when I'm not there to hear it? Just don't let that happen. It's disrespectful. It's also bad practice for when you are with that person. It makes it more likely to slip up and then you're going to make them feel bad. I do want to add a caveat to this that it's pretty personal. Not all trans folks want you to correct other people when they're not there. So it's maybe something you should ask and talk about, but I would really appreciate this. And I think that's true of a lot of people. I would be remiss if I didn't talk specifically about the situation that we're in right now. I wrote this talk actually before the pandemic, and then I gave it for the first time after the pandemic. So that was weird for my topic to become so topical. But it is topical because there are lots of people who are working from home for the first time right now. If you're one of those people, welcome. In some ways, it's kind of a huge revolution. There's a lot of people who have been trying to advocate about why remote work would work for them for like all of the reasons that I just said. And a lot of companies were telling them like, well, we can't. Well, guess what? We obviously can because we are, and we had to figure it out. And I think that it's going to be kind of hard to put it back in that box. If someone has been pushing that remote work would be helpful for them and you said we can't, it's going to be hard to tell them like, well, we can't again, so come back to the office. On the other hand, I think a lot of people who are working from home right now for the first time are saying like, well, this sucks. Well, guess what? Of course it sucks because we're in a pandemic and everything sucks. You know, suddenly becoming remote during COVID is like not a healthy remote environment, which again, you really have to foster. It's not what remote work is normally like. You're not normally under all this stress. You're not normally stuck in your house all the time with your spouse who's also working from home and like your kids who can't go to school and it's so distracting. I do have worries that people are just gonna have experienced remote work in this way and be like, well, remote work sucks. It doesn't suck. Being in a global pandemic sucks. Remote work is great for a lot of people, although again, it's not for everyone. So I'm really curious what's going to happen, you know, in the future, a year from now, a couple of years from now. It's hard to even really speculate about it in a lot of ways because gosh dang it, we just don't know what the world is going to be like in a few months. I gave this talk for the first time a few months ago and I said that, and I had no idea what it was going to be like right now, and it's still true. But I do think that while we're in a tough situation right now, if we're intentional about it, we can let it change the landscape in ways that are exciting and are going to help people long term. If we integrate remote work as just a more standard part of our lives. You know, I think if we try to treat this like an opportunity as best we can, we'll be able to reap benefits long term, even from being in this like really bad situation. And I think that would be great if something good can come out of it. I will post this on Slack, so don't worry about this right now. But this is just a couple of their talks. The My Spoon Theory talk from RailsConf 2017, which I mentioned. Things I Wish I Knew Before Going Remote by Marla Zasheen was a talk at RailsConf 2019. Like I said, there's lots of remote work talks, but I happen to like this one a lot. Trans I for the Cis Ally was given by my friend Julian Fitzpatrick, a really excellent talk that goes more in depth into some of the things that I didn't have time for, like bathrooms, and like kind of really gives you a good perspective on what your trans coworkers might be thinking at any given time. That was also from RailsConf 2019. But overall, just thank you. Thank you for listening. This is really important to me. It's great to be part of a conference like Heartifacts. Even like, especially now, it's so great that we can still be doing some events. It's hard to give talks virtually, so I'm looking forward to talking to people after and getting a little bit of feedback. But, you know, stay safe, stay healthy. It's really important. And I think I'm gonna answer some questions like approximately right now.
You are approximately correct. Yeah, so thank you, Jamie, for your talk. It was really great. I really liked one of the points at the end where you talked about, you know, there's remote work, but also we're kind of in this remote work during a pandemic, which happens to be different. And I remember Scott Hanselman tweeting that he had worked from home for like at least 12 years. I don't remember what the number was, and how he said this is the first time he's been absolutely exhausted doing it just from the pandemic. By the way, this is my co-host Theodosius, so say hi.
You're giving us a very authentic remote experience right now.
Yes. I like your way of mentioning that. Somebody had asked, do you have thoughts on good or bad ways of, hopefully not too many bad ways, to give fully or mostly remote work folks opportunities specifically for social interaction?
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting because we're trying a lot of different things right now at that. Like we're trying, even during this conference, we're trying having like these discussion rooms and these breakout rooms and the hallway track. At my job, like I mentioned, I just started a new job. And like normally I would go in to their office for onboarding, but I haven't been able to. So they've scheduled me like half-hour virtual coffee dates basically with a bunch of my new coworkers, and they're like, just talk for a half hour, like not about work. And that's been really great. So I think it's kind of like just being aware of it is like the really big first step. Like if you realize that your remote folks aren't getting the same opportunities, then you can try to be intentional about that. But if you don't think about it and don't realize, that's when it gets really bad, I guess. But I am keeping an eye out for like what works and what doesn't work about social, like online social activities. So yeah. I'll keep you updated.
Cool. And somebody had mentioned, are there ways to do it without involving Zoom calls and Jackbox games, which I think our talk from Jenny Bramble on Saturday should help mention a few of these things. So hopefully we can answer those then. Somebody had wondered, is there a way to respectfully share a busy home? So not hurting the space that your kids or spouse might have with any of your work-related stress.
Ooh, that one's really tough. I'm lucky because I mentioned being in a busy home, but I'm actually personally not in one, so not to rub it in. But I think in general, like a general tip with remote work is that it's really important to have like a designated remote space. Even if you're not sharing a busy home, just the idea of like, this is the seat I'm sitting in when I'm working. And when I sit in this seat, I'm working. And when I go sit in another room, I'm not working. Because like the line between working and not working can be really tough when you're remote sometimes. So that's a tip you'll hear a lot. And I think that like, if you're serious about respecting that kind of space, like that kind of ties into what is being asked to there. But I don't know, if you don't have enough space to do that, it's just really tough. I used to go and like work at the coffee shop a lot, and obviously I haven't really been able to do that, but my local coffee shop, I missed it so much when it was closed that like I went and sat on the benches outside of it. They used to like put out tables, and they're not putting out tables right now because they're not open. So I brought my own like TV tray table and set it up and like worked outside of my coffee shop by myself, and it felt better.
That's kind of brilliant. I really kind of like that. One of my co-working spaces has closed just for safety things. So I'm been very kind of curious. No, I'm trying to think through like, where can I go that doesn't involve, like, where can I take a TV tray?
It feels great to work outside, actually. I totally recommend it if you can.
Yeah. So I was also kind of curious, you know, in theory, this pandemic will eventually subside and we won't live in a weird dystopian world anymore. You had a lot of great suggestions for remote work. And in theory, we're going to go back to an in-person world. How do you think might be a good way to make sure we achieve inclusivity when we do, or at least some of us, transition back to in-person offices?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that like, in terms of inclusivity in general in offices, that's kind of like a big one that we could talk about for a long time. For me, it's all about respect. I do think that like, it's going to be interesting when we go back to in-person offices for kind of the reason I was getting at the end. Like, not everyone's going to want to. And I think that that's really valid. And I hope that we can like be thoughtful and mature about deciding how we're going to go back and like how we're going to let people make that decision for themselves. And I'm kind of hoping that this will happen naturally because like, as things are starting to open back up right now, not everybody, some people are like starting to do some stuff. Some people, you know, I go out and do things with my mask and I go to the grocery store and, you know, I'm careful, but I'm out and about a little bit, but some people still aren't at all. And like not wanting to be out and about is super valid. And so I think that when we first start opening offices, like the only reasonable thing you can do is let people choose whether or not they feel comfortable coming back yet, because it's not like COVID's gonna get turned off one day. It's gonna like get slowly better. And so I'm hoping that if we already have to kind of approach it that way, it'll make it easier. It'll make it easier overall to say, well, why don't we let people choose if like what they feel comfortable doing? My last job was based in New York City and I was in Buffalo. So obviously I was remote, but some of the engineering team like was physically in New York City and like they still didn't go into the office because like the office environment like didn't work as well for them. And I thought it was like cool that my company was giving them that option to work remote, even though like they were physically capable of coming in.
Yeah. All right, so we're out of QA time. Thank you, Jamie, again for your talk. We're going to take a short 10-minute break. Grab a drink, grab a snack, a restroom break, or a hallway track conversation. Our hallway track is still live. The Zoom link's on our Heartifacts attendee portal. If you're a paid ticket holder and you wish to smile for a group picture, or perhaps not smile as the case may be, we'll be taking some funny face screenshots in our Zoom gallery mode in 5 minutes in the hallway track also. So you're welcome to join us there. Don't forget about our Heartifacts logo slate auction sale, art auction sale, as well as signups for tomorrow's lightning talks. The links are all both in the Heartifacts live channel. See you shortly at about 10 minutes. So see you then.
Hey folks, Code and Supply is funded by our conference operations as well as monthly subscriptions. Paid membership starts at $10 per month and includes some great perks like discounts to Code and Supply conferences and events, discounts to businesses that we love in the Pittsburgh area and beyond, and access to our co-working space, well, in normal days, and many more things. Check it out at codeandsupply.co/join. Also, hey job seekers, hiring managers, and those with great referral bonus programs. Code and Supply has its own customized job board that uniquely syndicates to our mailing list, our Twitter, and our Slack, with jobs for freelancers also going into the freelance channel. For the time being, any Code and Supply paid member with an active subscription can post a job. Paid membership starts at just $10 per month. What better way to get your open role in front of engaged professionals than to put it right where they're chatting? Check it out at codeandsupply.co/jobs. And Sarah, what is our next speaker?
Heartifacts Day 2, Total Eclipse of the Heart, coming to a theater near you. Colin's going to fire me after this, I'm pretty sure. Next up, we have Valerie Phoenix, the founder and CEO of Tech by Choice. She's also a senior software engineer at Mastery Logistics. Wow, I can't talk tonight. Senior software engineer at Mastery Logistics. She holds a BS in psychology and art. Valerie is passionate about creating secure, human-centered digital experiences. As a successful self-taught developer, Valerie started Tech by Choice to give back to the community that helped her succeed. She's here to share about the awakening, and the systems that support it. And I'll pass it over to Valerie now.
Okay, awesome. I think everyone can see my screen now. Is that correct? Awesome. So yeah, today I'm going to be talking about the awakenings in the system that support it. And I know with everything that's going on in today's world, it's hard to tune in to a lot of things because it's hard to focus. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who's tuned in and sharing space with me today. I really appreciate it. I had an amazing intro, so I don't have to talk that much about myself, which is great because I am an awkward person and we need to have less time of me being awkward recorded out there on the internets. So I appreciate that. I just want to go ahead and throw out there that Tech by Choice is a community for all underrepresented groups. And we try to help people learn that tech is a place for them. And we do that in a very authentic way by making sure that we cover vocational skills as well as career and personal development. Just yesterday, we had an open and honest discussion about mental health. So that's really cool and some of the stuff that we work on. If you want to connect with me, my handle is digitalblkhippie. I'm on Twitter a lot when I'm not doing community work and coding. So yeah, let's continue the conversation there. I'm on that platform way too much. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into this talk. And when I was working on this talk and creating the slides, I realized that in order to have a discussion about racism, we have to be honest. And I was looking at the title and I realized that the title I originally came up with was a disservice to marginalized communities and individuals who've been speaking up about the injustices and how these systems that are created were never created equally. They were never created with everyone in mind, and they were not created so that marginalized communities can succeed in them. So it was not marginalized people who were asleep. It was other people who refused to listen to the lived experiences of these communities and really take it in and be active listeners to what's going wrong, who are now waking up. And so I know with everything that's been going on with 2020, I feel like one of the main things that is changing is that we're starting to notice that we're having a white awakening, and we're starting to notice the systems that support it. And I know I'm saying that it's a white awakening, but I want to make a point to everyone that it's not just white people who are becoming aware. Instead, it's this imperialistic mindset that's based off of racism and colonization and all of these other things that created periods like the Manifest Destiny and many others that I can point out in our history that has caused a number of people to treat marginalized communities across the globe differently. If we look at Western communities and Western civilizations, we know that there are a group of people who don't have European standards of beauty, and they're treated differently. The same way people who have different religious backgrounds are treated differently, and how the world views darker skin tones as a negative. The same way that gender expressions that fall out of the binary are viewed as wrong. In the same way that when your sexuality is not hetero, it's seen as strange. These are all ideals that come out of these systems that were not designed for us. And there's one that's very important that I want to talk about. And I want to say that transphobia kills. We know that, we understand that, but it's still running rampant in our communities. And it's not always white communities who are causing and benefiting from this harm. We understand that these ideals stem from racism, imperialism, and things like that. But we need to understand that people who benefit from these systems are the people who are still in power. So no matter how deadly these viewpoints are and the behaviors that these systems support, there are going to be people who either are from those communities in power or those who are trying to gain some type of power that are going to uplift some of these isms, whether it's sexism, racism, homosexuality, ableism. There's just a long list of things that we want to rid of this world, but it's being upheld because the way the system was designed is that these patterns and tendencies and behaviors are ones that are easy to fall back on if we don't take a moment to pause and ask questions and really think about the policies that we create or the environments that we work in. And this is especially true when we look at how all of these behaviors and systems play out in tech. Because tech is just a microcosm of the bigger world that we live in. I mean, if we look at the globe as a whole, the systems that are in place here can be replicated everywhere else in the world, and we see it and we understand that. But the one thing that is different, and it makes it hard for some people to pinpoint these actions and see where they stem from, is the fact that it manifests in different ways depending on the environment. So how can we break this down in tech? I recently understood what site reliability engineering is, and I think it's funny because these theories and these structures are something that I've been using in my life just to understand how to fix day-to-day things. But now that I understand and I have this vocabulary with site reliability engineering, or SRE, I now understand how I can apply this to everyday life. So I found this chart. It mimics the Milo's hierarchy of needs, but in the SRE realm. So it starts off with monitoring. These are the things that we put in place to see how an application is doing and if it ever goes down at any point. And if it does go down, we go a step up in the pyramid and we go into incident reporting. Depending on the issue that happens or arises, it gets passed off to someone who can debug it and try to fix it. And after that fix is in there, we do a postmortem. And from that postmortem, we are able to understand what the root cause was and try to really take a moment to reflect on different things that we can do and tests that we can put in place to go ahead and make sure that going forward, once we try to scale the application, that we are planning to and making sure that we do not have those issues come back up. And if they do, we know how to handle them. And so once you have that solid foundation, you're able to build out and architect this amazing application with the front and back end databases and all that stuff. And then you're able to take this to production and have it used by other people. So I understand that in tech, we have all of these systems that we build out, and we have all of these policies and procedures that are built in to understand if it's working and if it's not. And we also know if and when we need to do things to make it better. So why not use the same system to figure out what's not working in our cultures? We need to use this system to debug the systems that are now being amplified in 2020. So using that thought process, I decided to break down some of the things that I've noticed and witnessed in tech over the last few months and try to relate it back to the bigger systems at play. And I started off with the lack of monitoring that is happening in the tech industry. A lot of these companies, we never know what's going wrong until it blows up. Some of the companies that I listed here, like Gatsby, just a few days ago, we had a contractor share their experience of working at Gatsby and how negative it was, and how all of those systems at play came out in ways that created an environment that wasn't welcoming to a lot of people. And it even came to light that some of the stuff that they were doing was illegal. And then we have companies like Pinterest, who recently over the years have been getting more and more recognition for having features that highlight diversity and inclusion. But we had 3 Black women come out and say that they felt like they were underpaid and they faced racist comments. And when they spoke up about this and tried to get those things to change and to make sure that they weren't working in a hostile environment, they were subject to retaliation because they raised those complaints. And then you have Lambda School. It's a coding boot camp, and in tech, we know that boot camps are the center of a lot of controversial things. But there was one article that I recently came across about Lambda School that was news to me. It was a former employee who was speaking out about the problem she saw with the way that they were handling diversity with their students. And she also highlighted some of the ways that she experienced microaggressions and racism while working there. And the company was actually coming after her and trying to sue her for speaking out about those things. Now, if we look at the bigger system at play, we see that what's going on here is the control of power. When you have these systems in play, in order to keep your power and to stay on top, you have to limit the access so that other people can't reach the top and take you down. So there's no real way for us to do those reportings, and there's no real way for us to get a health check on these companies without some irreversible damage happening, and we find out after the fact. So one of the solutions I came up with is that we should start using self-reporting tools like Good Job. Good Job helps keep the pulse on organizational health and because it's a third-party app, it increases transparency and reduces bias, because you're not questioning if the company changed the numbers to make them look good. It's not their tool. It's just the employees reporting how they feel and what the environment is actually like. Now we move on to incident reporting. Incident reporting is sometimes very unclear in these tech organizations. It could be unclear because there's a lack of policies and you don't know who to talk to when something goes wrong, or you don't even know what you can and can't, or can and shouldn't report. It's just no one really knows these things. And then you have to deal with the fact that if you do report things, you don't know if there's any checks and balances in place. And so if you're reporting someone higher up, you're not sure if anything bad will happen to you because you're reporting someone who has more power than you do. So looking at the systems in place here, again, it's a power thing, because when you're doing the reporting and you're unsure of how the outcome will come, there's an inequality there. So we want to be very careful when we report these things. We sometimes don't report them because we know that we don't always have the power that we're looking for. So one solution that I came up with is that we need to create risk management systems that we can fall back on when things go wrong. Even in the realm of SRE, we know that we want to have steps written out for incident reporting, because when something goes down and it's in production, people's anxiety is already high. We don't want to just respond to things instantly in that state. So instead, we know that we need to manage these incidents effectively. And to do that, we need to have things listed out to reduce that anxiety and make sure that we are responding to things correctly. And this moves us on to the postmortem. Or this part was actually really difficult to break down and understand in the tech space because there's really no postmortem. When something goes wrong and someone leaves the company, the most I could really think about and did some research about is they do an exit interview. And during an exit interview, the HR department will ask you why you're leaving, if anything bad happened, and that was the cause of you wanting to leave the company. Now, there's been countless studies that show that most people leave companies because of their manager and not so much of the actual company. But HR still asks you these questions. But especially for marginalized individuals, HR and employees don't have the best relationship. I was told whenever I go through an exit interview that I should not tell the truth, because if there is at any point I want to come back to the company, it could be a liability for them to hire me again. So it was never in my best interest to tell the truth. So if this is the only postmortem we have, is this really effective? If we look at the systems, the bigger systems at play, it's power once again. And I want to point out the fact that a lot of these systems are centered around power and the fact that one group of people are trying to hold all of the power. So at a number of different points, you see them restricting access and opportunity and making sure that the policies that are putting out there are benefiting them. So one solution that I came up with is that we can create clear policies. I've said this already in the slides, and it's honestly one of the easiest ways to make change. If we have clear policies and make sure that we are reducing bias and racism and all of those things and all of the isms, when we are making these policies, we will increase retention rates. Just by making sure that we are doing these things and making sure that we are taking the time to really understand why people are leaving and taking that pause to reflect and find different ways that we can make things better and increase those retention rates. The next part that we walk into is the testing. This was another great area for me when understanding the tech industry at large and how it interacts with these systems. The one thing that I did think of is the performance improvement plans. These plans are given to employees who are falling behind. They may not be hitting their mark and things like that. And the employers are trying to work with them to get them back on track and to keep them as an employee. But a lot of the times when I looked at the people who have been on performance improvement plans or PIPs, there was no real clear path as to what led them to get on these PIP plans. And when they got on the plans, the goals and KPIs that they had or key performance indicators that they had weren't that clear either. So it seemed very vague, and it didn't seem like it was anything that would be in the employee's favor. Instead, it just seems like another way to prolong letting someone go. So if we look at what systemic racism looks like, it's just a reinforcement of all of these policies and practices that are based on stereotypes and biases and all of these different things, but it's supported by policies. And this is what PIP plans look like. They look like, because they're so vague, they look like just another way to cover up all of the isms and reasoning behind why someone is being let go. So the solution here would be to create clear policies. And when we create these policies and making sure that everyone understands what is expected of them while they are employees, and even if they do go on a PIP plan, this will have an equitable impact on everyone. It doesn't mean that everyone will keep their job or anything like that. It just means that if you don't miss your mark or you don't hit your mark, you'll understand what mark it is, why you didn't make it, and it would be clear as to why you were let go if you are. The next part is the capacity planning. So this is where we start to scale and make things bigger. A lot of organizations scale really fast and things fall apart, and they blame it on scaling. If we look at Lambda School, we'll see that example happening there. They scaled really fast. They were probably trying to hit their quotas and make sure their margins look good and things like that. So they were trying to attract more and more students. But they didn't really pay attention to the harm that they were causing by the different tactics that they used to get those students in. A lot of the students that they attracted were from marginalized communities and lacked the funding that it took to go to Lambda School. So they took out these loans that were not set up to help anyone but the banks. So looking at this system, it's important to understand that a lot of these things that are at play has to do with systemic racism. And one of the key factors in systemic racism is ignoring the red flags and things that have happened in our history. If you think about it, when 2020 and everything started to happen, a lot of people kept saying, I can't believe it, it's 2020. Why is racism still a thing? I can think back to when Obama became president for the first time, and a lot of people were saying racism is going to end. Obama is president. All of the bad times in America are gone. Or they would say, like, it was so long ago, it doesn't matter, and that's how he became president. But if you look at any history book, you don't have to flip back that many pages to see that racism and all of these other isms weren't that far back. And the things that we are referencing didn't happen that long ago. So what happens when organizations scale and they don't take a time to pause and go back to the bottom of that pyramid and start over and make things better, they're just repeating things and just doing it at scale and causing more and more harm. So some of the solutions that we can have for this one is just stop trying to scale when your systems don't work. If we just take a pause, like I said, and start back over at the bottom of that pyramid, we can make improvements, and it wouldn't take as long as most people would think. And when you do scale, your margins will be higher because you've got it right and you don't have to go back and fix a lot of mistakes. Now, the development part of this talk is very frustrating for me. If we look at the hiring practices in tech, we can all agree that they're awful. Just a few days ago, I read this article that was titled, "People Like You Don't Belong in Big Tech." It came out from a blog written by Aiden Benjamin. The title, as I was reading the blog, I realized the title was a response he received from an interviewer after he shared that he needed additional accommodations due to his disability. The interviewer's response was, "People like you don't belong in tech." The only solution that I would ever suggest for a situation like this is to fire that individual who said that. Because imagine if this person felt so confident to say that to someone, what are they not saying out loud? How many people did that person let go because of some ism that they believe in? How many people did not get that raise that they deserved or that promotion because that person wanted to hold on to their power? It's things and people like this who are in power and can create the policies that continue to build and support these systems that we are trying to work and get away from. There is no doubt in my mind that the example that I'm showing here for the development section is institutional racism. Because, and I say this even though it's related to ableism, what we're seeing in when people are playing out and having these tendencies and patterns that promote ableism is directly related to racism. You can't have one without the other. Racism and ableism is just a tool to put barriers on people. So by eradicating one, by eradicating racism, we're that much closer to eradicating ableism. So now we've gone through this pyramid, and if we don't do it right, we will get to the production stage and we'll build things like the facial recognition that doesn't pick up darker skin tones or different gender expressions. And all of the facial recognitions that doesn't work, it's usually built off of data, and the machine learning is using data that isn't clean. Like, it isn't good data. It's full of bias. It's full of racism, ableism, all of the isms. But it got to the production stage and it's out there and it's causing harm. Another example of tech that gets to the production stage that has all of the bad things baked into it is the Facebook ad algorithm. This is something I recently had to interact with. I was doing a mental health event for Tech by Choice, and it was focused on our Black members. And so I was trying to run an ad that had Black community and self-preservation. The ad was rejected multiple times because it was flagged as a social justice issue. Black mental health is a social justice issue when Facebook looks at it. We see that power, again, is at play with some of the issues that we see when bad code gets to production or bad algorithms are out there. But I want to make a key point here that the power that I'm talking about here, it's not so much someone's trying to hold things back, but instead people are holding back individuals from being in positions of power to make a change and to make a difference. So the solution that I came up for this issue is to go ahead and make sure that we're creating environments that will allow more people to enter this space and have positions of power where they can create policies and change. But we want to make sure that they feel empowered enough to challenge the status quo. So through these stats, we can see that tech is really just a microcosm of the world, the larger world that we live in. But the good thing about that is we can change it for the better. In tech, how many people do you know that takes home tech with them? There are a number of people I know that use an agile methodology to plan out grocery shopping and events that they have for fun. We can use this logical thinking to be able to identify the thoughtless tendencies and behaviors that tend to come up from these systems that were designed to make sure certain groups do not succeed. And I know I said a lot of negative things about tech, but I do want to point out the fact that tech is starting to change. It's just slow AF. And when I think about this, I think it's very odd that as a community and as an industry, we can build these amazing products that can scale very quickly, but we can't get human interaction right. It's something to think about, and it's something that we can change. How fast and how effective the change is all depends on us. So I've come to the end of my talk, and I just want to say thank you for listening to me talk about these systems and finding different ways that we can pinpoint the different behaviors and tendencies so we can make the change we want to see. Just a quick shout out, Tech by Choice is trying to change the system for minority-owned businesses by running a hackathon to help take these business owners into the digital space and make sure that they thrive. If you want to be a part of this change, go ahead and check out our events website and see how you can get involved. And that's it.
All right. Thank you so much, Valerie. That was great. I loved all of the stuff you had in there. So many helpful slides. One of the things I find almost ironic is tech is almost always this like move fast, break things sort of mentality. And yet, you know, you just mentioned tech in terms of at least these kinds of systems is just slow, incredibly slow. And it's incredibly ironic, I think, just in general. How somebody had wondered, how do we keep feedback from becoming entangled with performance-focused activities like reviews or OKRs?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah.
I think I'm a little jittery, even though it's like I'm talking to my computer.
That's fine. How do we keep feedback from becoming entangled in performance-focused activities like, you know, reviews from managers or OKRs or other things like that?
Yeah, I think organizations that only hold feedback for reviews are not good organizations. Like, you need to have constant feedback to get the better reviews and to improve like your skill set and things like that. So I think if the system was set up that way, so it's just constant feedback, constant communication about what's working, what's not working, there wouldn't be any room to tie it to KPIs. And I think there are different ways that we can talk about improvements and not tie it to metrics. And I think that's one of the trickier parts. Just in tech in general, we don't do a good job at tracking non-like code related tasks. I don't think we do a good job at that.
It's also interesting because we're so much into collecting all this data, but yet we almost don't have data on our own practices like this. Somebody had wondered if you had any thoughts on how to scale down systems that don't work, and how to insist on perpetuating and lifting people up.
Yeah, I've noticed that in most organizations, there's one little part of a org that gets it right. And something that I was recently told is that when you do have a part of your org that's getting it right, what you want to do is slowly add individuals from other groups that are getting it wrong, add them to the good team, let them get used to those practices and the way things work there. And then they will instinctively take that back to any group or any team that they work with. So if we can do that, it takes time. That I don't think you can speed that one up. So it is going to be slow as AF. Wait, don't say bad words. So that's fine, but that's something that we would want to do at a slower pace.
All right. I think we're about out of time. So thank you, Valerie, again for your great, insightful talk. This brings us to the end of Heartifacts Day 2. Again, we're really glad you could join us for discussions on mental health, community building, and all other important things we should be talking about in the software community. We've had 3 more wonderful speakers tonight, Tori, Jamie, and Valerie. They all did a great job, but also shared with us a lot of good insights. Remember, you can continue these conversations after the stream ends. Our Slack stays open 24/7, so you can head over to the conversations in our Heartifacts channels over there. You can also search for the hashtag Heartifacts on Twitter to see what others have been saying. If you're a registered attendee, you can join us tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern or 2 p.m. Pacific. We'll have Yvette Menaze and Chloe Shearer as they go over the results from Code and Supplies compensation survey. We'll also have lightning talks and board games as well. You can give a lightning talk tomorrow night. The sign-up link is in the Heartifacts live channel now. Don't forget that the Heartifacts logo slate art auction as well. The link is also in the same channel. For everyone, we hope you're pumped for the final day of Heartifacts. Join us Saturday when we'll have the rest of our final 6 sessions, as well as more breakouts and activities too. The Zoom, YouTube, and Twitch links will all be the same, but just to double check, you can go through the attendee portal to check on the Zoom links. If you're a ticketed Heartifacts attendee, we're going to go ahead and head over to the breakout sessions in a few minutes. Head to breakout room A if you want to chat more about Jamie's talk on achieving inclusivity through remote work, or head to breakout B for Valerie's talk on the awakening and the systems that support it. And for everyone, we hope to see you Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. Have a great evening.